So quite a few people asked about a new revisited tutorial for Octane Render and Cinema 4D, all about Vectron and fractals, of course. The first thing you need is Cinema 4D. The version doesn't matter much, and for Octane I recommend using this version because there are some changes in the way Vectron works. So let's stick to this version for now. First open Octane and dock it here. So now we see the viewport, and you can just add a cube and you will see that it's right there. But there's also those ugly black lines which basically define the resolution aspect ratio, and you can change that here, and let's set that to squared like that. Let's add a light, so object and daylight, which is basically the sun. You can rotate it around. I want some shadow, so this angle is optimal. Okay, let's start with the Vectron object. So you can go under Object, Vectron, and nothing happens. Basically, it's under the cube. So if you hide the cube, you will see a simple sphere, but you don't see any sphere in the viewport because Vectron works with code, so you don't create any mesh. This is the Vectron Code. It's actually OSL, which stands for Open Shading Language, and this code defines the sphere. So you have a few parameters like the radius and translate. You can change those. It's very sensitive. So this changes the radius, and translate is basically moving the sphere around. Okay, that's fine. Let's delete the cube because we don't need that anymore. Let's try to load a fractal. So there's a few default fractals in Octane. You can just go under Vectron and Mandelbub, for example, and here we are. You can navigate around from Octane or just use these buttons here, and that looks good. So a few things. I don't really like the Mandelbub power 2, so let's switch to 8. Here you have your fractal, which is like really dense geometry, but doesn't affect in any way the memory from the GPU. So that's why you use Vectron for these kind of things. Having a geometry or a mesh with this fractal will be several gigabytes, and yeah, that's why we use Vectron for fractals. So let's go back to daylight kernel. There's a few things we need to fix in this Vectron code. Don't be scared, it's nothing complicated. But basically, I want the default power to be 8, because when you press compile or reset and compile, it goes back to power 2. So you can check here, you have the parameter declaration, and float means that basically it's not an integer, so you have the floating point here. So let's change that to 8 and hit compile and reset, and you will see that it sticks to 8. Another thing that we need to change is here at the cdist, which is basically the output. We need to add a minus 0.0001 plus, and this will change how the render looks, and you have to do this only if you are using Octane 23, because they changed some stuff in how Vectron works, so you can actually compare. Let's compare this view with the one that doesn't have the fix. As you can see, it does look a bit better. it's more defined and more shiny, and the material is acting way better. So let's keep this fix here. You can increase that or decrease it like that. We can actually create a new parameter to fix that. Just go under the parameter declaration here and set float epsilon equal 0.0001, and now we can just use this here, and now you can change it. So it's pretty easy. I'm not going to change other things in the code for the first tutorial, but let's focus a bit more on the light and on the materials we can apply to fractals. So let's create a very simple studio stand in Cinema 4D. So we don't need Octane at the moment. We can just close this up. And let's create an arc. Where is that? Okay. That's fine. You can convert that to object. Where is that? Current state to object. Let's switch the view just pressing here. And it's a spline. This means that it does have a few points. And we can just extend one point. So you create like a stand. Something like that. And same for the bottom. That should be fine. And now we need to extrude this. So extrude and put it under. As you can see, it has some depth now. Let's create a big one. And now finally rotate the stand so it's facing the right position. You can do that with the rotate here, or under coordinate you can change it here. Now let's center, and we should be fine. So let's go back to Octane. And as you can see, we have a nice stand. And now you notice that the mandelbulb is not rendering correctly. There are some black dark spots when you go away with the camera, as you can see here. So we can fix that. You can do that in two ways. Sometimes you just need to go under code group and decrease the bound like that. And another way is change the final output multiplier here and set that to 0.3 or below, but it's going to be slower. So I'm going to use both just to be sure that it's rendering correctly all the time from any camera angle. And we are pretty much set. We can create a new camera now. So object, Octane camera. When you click this little icon here, you will see what the camera see. So let's check that and reset the camera position. So everything must be 0 like that, and go away from the center a bit. Now let's rotate the extrude. Now everything is centered. So you can change a few more things in the camera. The object, you can change the focal length. I like 80. And also I want to zoom in just a bit. Actually move the camera, sorry. So here we have a nice render of the mandelbulb. Now I want to make this look more cool. So I don't like the daylight at the moment because it's I want something more atmospheric, you know, in like dark atmosphere. So we can delete the Octane Daylight tag and create a new object and use area light. This basically is a simple light which you can move around and rotate. And we want this light to always face the fractal. So to do that, I'm going to change the view here and switch to the right. And here change the camera to perspective. So we can change the light position without losing the camera position from Octane. It's much easier. And to make the light always face the fractal, we just need to go under Animate, Target, and set the target to Vectron. In this way, it's always facing the fractal. Just a matter of position. Something like this looks fine. But we realize that even when the light is off, there's still some white ambient light. So let's get rid of that by going under Object, Texture Environment, and set the color to black. Or it can actually be red, whatever. But I don't want that, so that's it. And let's enable the light again. And it looks pretty much like it should. So now you can play with the light position even more, and you can change the light size to get more defined shadow. Let's do that. It's under Details, and if you change, let's say, the radius to 1, you see that you don't have any the power of the light is not enough. So you can change that to under Octane Light tag and keep instance power and decrease the surface brightness. So this means that no matter how big the light is, it will always emit the same amount of light. Now that was just an example. I actually prefer to have a bigger radius, like 60 or something, up to you. Check the difference in shadow. And you can also use the render region to preview only that part, so you don't have to wait for the whole render to be completed. Okay, that's fine. And another thing I want to change is the kernel. So these are kernel. We are now in daylight, and we can change to path tracing, normal, Z depth, like the normal is this one, or UV. I use path tracer the most because it's more accurate, and you see the difference in the shadow. So let's compare this render to the daylight render. Direct light. You see we have more light bounces here, so it's more detailed. It's more realistic, let's say. And another thing I want to change is the Vectron Fractal rotation. So you can just select that and go here, rotate, and rotate it just a bit. Maybe the other side is better. Yeah, that looks good. And finally, we are going to create a simple material. So I have it here, it's a custom button, but you can just do materials and create diffuse material. Here you have it. And you can just apply that to the Vectron object. And to change the properties, just double click. And you can change the diffuse color to whatever you want. Let's keep it white for now. I just remember that we need to change the Octane settings because it's rendering forever. It's taking 26 minutes and we don't need that. So click under the gear and change the max samples to something that doesn't have much noise, like let's say 300. And also the GI clamp should be like 10 or 1. Doesn't change much. And now you see that it's much faster. Okay, let's go back to the material. So I often use the node editor. So you have your material here and all the properties like roughness. Let's do some tests. So let's store this render and change the roughness, set that to 1, and change the transmission to a color. So to do that, you can go here and click here. So now we have just a bit of red. It doesn't look like, but trust me, it's there. And especially if you decrease the diffuse color intensity. So this looks like almost skin. It's really cool. And you can also change the roughness. It's not a tutorial about materials, but they are really cool. So I'm happy with this one. Maybe just a bit less transmission. So we just have some small details around here and there. Okay, that's fine. And now I'm going to create another material for the background. So I click here. You can do from create, Octane diffuse. But actually we are going to use a glossy one. So apply the glossy to the extrude. And open the node editor. And I want the background to be black. So black color. Something like that. It doesn't update sometimes, so just refresh. And here we are. So we see there's some reflection going on. Let's move the camera a bit. Maybe lower the camera position so we can see some reflections. And look up. Yeah, something like that is cool. We see that there's also the light is reflected. So there's a way to hide that. But it is a bit advanced. It will be much easier to just move the light a bit like that, but we will explore other ways to do that. So for now, just move the light away. And let's play a bit with the roughness of the glossy material. So now it's like a mirror. We can change that by changing the roughness value, as you can see. And that's fine for now. So let's say we are happy with this render. With Octane, you can actually do some post-processing with the image. So let's do that. We need to change the resolution a bit. Like that. So we are seeing the final resolution of the image that we are going to render. And now let's play a bit with the colors and post-processing. So you have Octane camera and Octane camera tag. And from here, let's enable the camera imager and also the post-processing. So in the camera imager, you can change the exposure. And you can change but pretty much anything related to the post. So let's keep the gamma to 1. You can change the saturation. 1 is fine too. We can introduce some vignetting. That's nice. And then in post-processing you can do a few things. So there's the bloom, which is that glow effect, and you can just decrease the cutoff, increase the cutoff. So okay, this is fine. And finally you can apply some chromatic alteration. Don't abuse this effect, just a tiny bit here on the edges. It does look cool. And then we can use some custom LUT. So this is really cool because it changes the way the fractal look a lot. You can go for something moody, like this one is really nice. Let's stick to this one. And finally we are done. So I've just noticed that here there are some bad render artifacts, and we can just increase the fractal iteration. So let's have a look at that. If you set the iteration to a bigger number like 30, you will see that we don't have that anymore. So now you can just leave it and wait. Let's say 20 minutes. I know it's a lot of time. Maybe we are happy already at 5 minutes. And also the image is pretty big. Up to you. I mean, you can wait as much time as you want. And when you are happy with that, you can just click on Save Image As and export as PNG. 16-bit, please. And just hit Save. So that's it. And in next tutorial we are going to explore a bit more complex fractals and how to get different colors that follow the fractal itself. So we are going to explore the materials and new shapes. But for today that's it.